Hello. Carm3D here with you again. This is a direct continuation of my last video, focusing more on the neck. Continuing on the neck, what I've done is I've recreated the scene as it was last time, with three major differences. First difference is the entire spine is not there, but it doesn't need to be for what we're doing. So I just have a single joint for the rib cage, and it branches off of this square here. Second is this was the head controller, and you can see it's doing everything it's supposed to, but I moved it off to the side, which is standard. I did the whole thing where you parent this to this so that I could zero out the orientation and then reparented it back to the top of the list, and then just moved it aside because it doesn't really need to be directly on top of the head. So, and of course the third change, you should probably be able to see, is that I do no longer have joints going up his neck, I have nulls. However, these nulls were set up in the exact same way as joints would have been. So, same thing here, the joint end. Oh, okay, I originally called it rib end, and then I called it neck starter. Let me switch to the left side view. It is oriented in the way that the neck will be flowing through that junction right there, just like I did last time. And then neck A is in that same exact spot. You can see everything zeroed out here and here. Neck B, it goes only straight off the Z, so I'm not moving in any other direction. So basically they are rigged in the same manner that I rigged joints. They just don't look like joints because they're not joints. Also, another interesting to note is right here under the object tab, normally joints, or excuse me, nulls look like that. Well, oh, okay, they don't look like that. They look like that, I think. The little dot there. But I changed it to a diamond, and I shrunk the radius and changed the orientation, so that makes them a little easier to spot based on their how they used to look, which is like the little dot right there. So anyway, it goes up to there, and the head bone is once again detached, just like last time, branching off in the same orientation as the last neck null. And I got all the constraints set up just like last time with that thing going on. So we're going to continue from here and show you my solution for this whole neck twisting issue. So the first thing I will do is add some joints. Got a joint there, parent that to the neck A, and then zero everything out. And freeze that. And then we'll add another joint. Zero all this stuff out, and then I'll just move this like so. That's a little too far. Okay, maybe 4.3, maybe 4.4. Good enough. It doesn't have to be super exact. There can be a little gap there, or they can overlap a little bit. It's going to end up with weights painted for all these things anyway, so the placement's not quite as crucial as it is in other programs. So I'll just freeze that. And then I'll pause the video while I finish off these neck joints. I just wanted to show you how I was going to do it. Basically, I'll call that neck joint start. Neck joint. Oh, I gotta put a letter in there. A. And so basically what I'm going to have is a pair of joints, in other words a complete bone joint, branching off of each one of these nulls. This will have one in the same manner I did this one, and so will this, reaching up to D. And of course I don't need one for D because the head branches out from there. So I will pause the video while I finish that up. Okay, there it is. That didn't take long, did it? I didn't feel a thing. Okay, so let's look in our perspective view, just for the grins. So now you can see it's looking much more like it was at the end of the last video. Except this thing is clearly not rotating half as much, so I guess I have to fix that. It wasn't quite as obvious when it was a chain of nulls, so I will fix that right about now. Okay, I got it working. This was the problem. I just realized that Cinema has a problem with updating some of these tags in real time. So what I did was I made a 20 frame animation bending the bone, and it works fine. But if I grab the controller and rotate it in real time, it doesn't update the way it's supposed to. So only when you scrub through the frames does it work properly, which is okay. It will render fine. You know, you don't get real-time updates. You don't get real-time feedback when you are adjusting controllers, but you get close. You know, this when I rotate this way, you get a pretty good idea. You know for sure the head's this way. You just have to use your imagination and know the neck will flow into it after you have some keyframes set, and everything's fine. So it's just another example of the unfortunate awkwardness of the way Cinema is handling its character tools. Other programs will keep up with these kinds of calculations in real time, so you get real-time feedback so you can see what you're doing. But unfortunately we don't have that here, so c'est la vie. Let's move on. Now we are back, you know, to where we were, except we added a chain of nulls for the neck, and then joint chains, a singular joint chain after each of these guys. And of course you probably know why I did that, but the reason is because when we rotate this guy, we now have independent constraint access for each of these joints going up the neck. And if I spin this guy, it's not going to have any effect on this because it's a separate, you know, this is not a child. This is hard. I'm having a hard time selecting these guys. This is not a child of this. This is a child of this. So if I spin this, it has no effect on this. Alright, so we got that out of the way. Let's add some quickie constraints. And these should be very easy. They should have no issues with the priority and all that stuff that we were messing with earlier, because it's not a multi-tag chain of calculations. It's only a single one for each bone, each joint. So it should be fairly easy. Character tag, constrain. We could just turn off everything except for the bank rotation. Let's just try it like 20%. And then for this guy, same thing. 50% here. And then the last one. 75%. And you can fudge with these actual values once you have everything in place, but this should look fairly good. Yep, there we go. So this is pretty much the way I rig necks in Lightwave, and we managed to get the same functionality in Cinema, which is great, because what that means is if your neck, well, we can't see it in real time, can we? If your neck is over here and then I rotate the bank, we can twist the head and its spine as much as we want, and we're not really affecting the bending rotation, you know, the heading and pitch rotations of these bones. It's only spinning along its core, which is very cool and allows for maximum flexibility in animation. Okay, so there is one, well, technically there could be 2 or 3 steps left, but it depends on how complex you want to get. If this was like a cartoon neck rig, this would be all you'd need, and most likely your spine would be going more to the middle, and it would be a thinner neck, so it would be a lot simpler to deal with. The thicker something is, like the thicker the arms or legs or anything is, typically the more finessing you have to do to the rig, and the more sophisticated controls you have to make sure everything looks good once it's deforming. But when it's like a very basic cartoon with thin arms and thin necks and all that, it's a lot easier, typically. Okay, so the next thing to do, we have, let me turn this over here, we have the neck flowing into the head. When the head tilts to the side, the top of the neck bends in that direction, but we do not have the ability to bend the neck elsewhere yet. So if you wanted to do an Egyptian dance here, or if you wanted to pitch his head and neck forward, he doesn't have that control yet. So we're going to have to add a control for that, and I'm not exactly sure what to do, so I'm going to pause the video while I try some stuff. Okay, I think I have it working now. I added this null here, and I used the object display to be circle facing the camera 3 centimeters, so it's always going to stay there above his shoulder. I parented it to this guy right here, actually at the end of him right there. So he's a child of the rib cage, so he's not going anywhere. He'll stay there, and that will be the neck rotation control. So you can see I can rotate like this, or I can rotate like this, but this has no effect. So let's see how we set all this up. Let's delete these guys. Well, I'll just do it like this. Okay. Now, before I reconstruct what I just did, I did make one change, and that would be in this guy, I think. No, that's the rotation one. Position one. Remember I set the priority to dynamics, and then the other one over here, this guy, I set that to expression. Well, I moved it forward up further in the timeline of the groups that get calculated, because we're going to be working with expressions, and I want these to be calculated first. So I set that one to dynamics, and then I set this one to, no, the other one, I set that one to generators, whatever that means, but basically I have it last. So, and it still works. It's the same deal though. You still have to, oh, I deleted the animation. You still have to scrub the timeline to see them update. They don't update in real time. Alright, so let's see what we do first. I'm going to go to my neck controller, which is right here. I'll go into the coordinates, and I will right click here to Espresso and choose Set Driver. And then I go to neck A, this guy, the little null there at the beginning of the neck, and into coordinates, right click here, Espresso, Set Driven Relative. Okay, you can see these guys changed, and then this guy appears. So you can as you can see it's an Espresso tag. Double click on this. This window pops up, and when I click on this range mapper node, you can see that this contextual panel changes up, and there's lots of different options. Don't worry, it's exactly as complicated as it looks. Well, let's close that for now. Same thing, neck control, Espresso, Set Driver, neck B, Espresso, Set Driven Relative. So we got another tag right there. Okay. So what I've done now is I've told this guy to copy its rotations to these guys' rotations, and it's doing it in all three axes, and it's doing it on the bank too, which is not good, because you can see as I spin it, it's affecting the bending of the neck, which is what we were specifically trying to avoid earlier. That's okay, we can fix that. Let's do that by double clicking on this guy, then click on this guy. Okay, so let's look at this, the parameter tag here, parameter tab, and you can see input, input lower, input upper, output lower, output upper. So it's basically saying that, if you can't tell already, this is heading, pitch, and bank. So it can rotate from a range from 0 to 360, and it remaps it out to 0 to 360 on the destination node, which we just lost there. Now we have to go back here. Okay. So by turning this 360 to 0, now this has no effect. When I rotate the bank of the controller, it will have no effect on the bank of this null. So we'll just do that for all of these guys. Zero that out. Oh wait, double click. Zero that out. Okay. Now, there's probably a way to do everything in one node chart here. I could probably put neck A, neck B, neck C all in one thing, and then have these guys branching off into them. Unfortunately, I don't know how to do that. But this is working, so let's see what we got now. We can rotate anywhere except for bank has no effect. Okay, that's good. Now, there's another problem, and that is when I rotate this, we are getting equal amount of rotation all the way down the neck in each one of the nulls. They're rotating the same amount, which is nearly not ideal because necks don't do like that. This one right there, I'm having trouble selecting this guy. This little null is not going to rotate as much as the middle of the neck. Most of your rotation is going to happen in the middle, and very little is here, and then, well, maybe some here, but remember this is also going to be doing its automated stuff we did earlier, having it flow into the head. So I'm going to focus primarily on this null right here, and I'll diminish the effect of the mappage on these two other nulls. So let's do that. Double click. Click. So let's see. Let's reduce these guys to maybe 50. And same thing with this. $50 and $50. Okay. So now when I rotate this guy, most of the rotation is happening right there. So that's good. Now, if you are doing a cartoon, this would be plenty. But you may have noticed that the spine that is flowing through the neck is primarily in the back. So we got all this empty space here with potential problems. It depends. If your weight mapping is really good, then it might not be such a big deal. But to my experience, I found it helpful to put some joints that help reinforce the deformations of the front of the neck. I'm going to add a joint. It's getting complicated, isn't it? And this is all stuff for the neck. Rigging is now for the timid. If anybody could do it, we'd all be working for DreamWorks, I guess. Alright, so joint. Let's put this underneath the neck starter. No. Zero this stuff out. Okay, so I'll call this sternomastoid starter L. Okay, sternomastoid is the name of this muscle. Let's go in this diagonal direction here. It's kind of like it looks like a shock absorber going up, because you get they come down to a V shape. It connects there just behind the bottom of the ear, and then it connects right behind the clavicles, and it kind of wraps around the neck. So I've found that putting a joint there helps. You can call them the shock absorber joints if you want, or whatever. So let's move this into place. Oh, great. Yeah. What I think I should have done is neck starter is a joint. I thought that was a no. Ribs. Yeah, I guess it was. Control A. Well, I guess with the nature of joints, it's always going to draw a joint to its child. I was thinking we could just have the joint go from here to here. I guess I could technically put that as a child of a null, but I'm not going to worry about it for now. When you do it, you could put a null there and then have the joint spring out of the null. So let's move this off to the side a little bit there. That looks pretty good. Let's rotate that. Alright, let's add another joint. Sternomastoid and L. And let's zero this out. And then push forward in the Z direction there. That looks like I got it pretty close. I'll just rotate its parent. Remember, if you click and drag to rotate outside of the controller, it rotates in the orientation that we are looking at it. Now, we've already frozen that. I'll freeze it again. Doesn't hurt. Okay. Now, the trick is we want this to act like shock absorbers. So we want this to, just to the end of this muscle, to follow a point on the head. Now, as you know, if I simply made this a child of the head, then we'd no longer have a joint drawing from point A to point B. So what we must do is add a null object. And I will take my null, make it a child of the end of that sternomastoid muscle, zero everything out. The rotation doesn't actually matter because it's just going to track where it's located. Okay, and then we will parent this to the head. So we now have a null right there. So sternomastoid targ for target underscore L. And then be sure to freeze it up. Key it up. Okay. Take the end guy there, add a tag, constrain, probably want to put that last. Position only. We'll choose our targ, and in theory it's working pretty good now. Okay, I don't know what's happening there. When I was just scrubbing through the frames, and it's the only thing moving is the bone. Oh, okay, that's because the head's moving. Well, that's a good thing. It looks like it's working. It's just not really obvious because their geometry is not following the bones. Let's rotate some of these guys, and yeah, so that's a good thing. Everything's working good there. I have also found that I have good results when I, in addition to the two sternomastoid muscles, I'll put a bone right in the center, a joint right in the center, and same place, starting right in the middle, but just a little bit behind, so like right about there. And this one would be tracking to a null object that is attached to the jaw, not the head, of course, but the jaw, because the jaw can open up and down and move independently of the head. So that would follow the jaw, and if you want to even further cement your deformations of the neck, you can add another one right about there. So right there, and then ending right about there. So just going through that side of the neck there. I think those are the trapezius. I could be wrong. So just going like that. But I think this is enough for this video. You now know how to do all that stuff. So yeah, it's crazy stuff, huh? Welcome to my world. Alright, I'll be talking to you later.